That's me. I'm wearing like exactly the same thing. How's everyone doing? Everyone alright?
Yeah.
Just warm up the room, you know. Good morning. Can I just say how happy I am to be here, really honestly. It's such a privilege to come and speak to you all today. I have come to a lot of Creative Mornings events over the last year, and I know how much I've valued some of the things I've learned from speakers here over the last year. So I'm hoping that today I can leave you with something to think about as well. I've been coming to this year about a year. It was pretty much bang on a year since I came to my first event. And I vividly remember the first time that I arrived. It was in the General Assembly building over in Aldgate East at the time. I walked into the room and everyone was putting on their sticky name badges and with coloured Sharpies, and there was filter coffee and granola, and I felt like I was at some kind of weird speed flatmating event. But what jumped out at me instantly as I walked into that room, a room buzzing full of people with ideas and excitement, was a small sign just to the right of the projector screen that said, "Good things come to those who learn." And it jumped out at me because it spoke to exactly how I was feeling after what was probably the most extraordinary year of my life. Before I go any further, I should introduce myself. My name is Furness, I'm 28, and I am a music manager. That's what I do for a living, and basically, for people that don't know what that means that I manage bands. Quick question, has anyone seen the Spice Girls movie? Spice World? Yeah? Richard E. Grant, he's a manager. So yeah, I work at a company called Everybody's, and I'm very fortunate. I've been there for about 4.5 years, and I get to work with some of the biggest artists and greatest songwriters that we have in the UK at the moment. The job of a manager is really to represent the artists that they look after in their business and in their kind of creative endeavours as well. And a good manager will be with an artist through their career, through the highs and the lows. But I'm not here today to talk to you about my job. I'm here today to talk to you about quite the opposite. I want to talk to you about what I do in my spare time. So can I just get a show of hands in the room who growing up had some hobbies, something that they did outside of school that they're passionate about regularly? Great, that's most people. Okay, so who now as an adult has something that they do regularly that they're passionate about that's just for them, that is free of their day-to-day obligations? These things don't count. Well, that's a lot of people, but not as many as there were. And I think this room, we've got some interesting people in this room. Now, before I go any further, could I just say, I fucking hate the word hobbies. It's the worst. It sounds so archaic. It's like something out of an Enid Blyton book. It sounds like stamp collecting and Airfix models and jolly hockey sticks and all that. It just doesn't give any weight to the importance of having something that you're passionate about, that you do just for you, that are free of your day-to-day obligations. As Al said, the word kind of side project, side hustle gets bandied around a lot as well. And although I think side projects are absolutely great, it doesn't quite kind of serve the purpose that I'm looking to talk about in this context. I call it a channel, and I call it a channel for two reasons. One is that it implies that you are channeling yourself into that thing. It acts as a necessary outlet for whatever you're feeling, stress, creativity, happiness, sadness. It's your way of sharing your highs and releasing your lows, so those things don't just sit and bottle up inside you. I also like the word channel because it implies that you can just switch yourself onto it. It's your channel, you're in charge, you're the programmer, you're the viewer, and it's a safe space for you to practice, experiment, fail, and ultimately develop. So if you hear me talking about channels, that's what that's all about. Growing up, I've always had a strong urge to express myself creatively. I grew up acting in plays, and I went on to study theatre and performance at university. I was also writing songs and being in bands and all that kind of stuff. So I always had a channel. Like a lot of people, once I graduated from university and got on that road to building a life for myself, I really struggled to keep up with those creative outlets. Getting a job, moving out of home, earning a salary, all that stuff, it really takes a lot of work these days, and it's hard to keep up with those other bits of your life during that time. And it took me a good few years to get to the point where I did have a job that I was happy with and I felt settled. And by the time I did get to that point, those channels that I had, those creative outlets, just didn't quite seem to fit anymore. I was so busy living in London and feeling fulfilled from my job that it just didn't quite fit. London is my home. I don't need to preach to anyone in this room about how amazing London is. The fact that events like this can happen here is a perfect example of what makes this city great. But what I find fascinating about London, and like a lot of cities, is that despite the fact that the opportunities for discoveries are endless, it's still so easy to get into the rhythm of doing the same kind of things, going to the same kind of places and meeting the same kind of people. It's certainly what happened to me over the years. At the end of 2015, I decided that some things needed to change. Despite the fact that I really identified with and was proud of my job being a manager, I was feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the thought that it completely defined who I was, and that somewhere along the way I'd lost that kind of urge for creative expression that I felt was the fabric of who I was. So, looking forward to 2016, I said, feeling proactive, as one does at the end of a year, I said that this is the year that I'm going to snatch the reins, and I'm going to reclaim my creativity, and I'm going to hit unsubscribe on the notion that I should just keep going where modern life is naturally taking me. So, I set myself a challenge, and the challenge was this. I would take on one new creative project each month of 2016 in something that I'd never done before, as a way to experience and discover more of the ways us human beings express ourselves. And it also kind of gave me a way to discover more of the city that we lived in. The rules were pretty simple. I'd spend the first 3 weeks of a month basically learning as much as I could about whatever the theme was as possible, doing stuff, going to places, meeting people, experimenting, and then in the final week I had to learn or do something that completely rounded up my experience of that thing. The project was called 12 by 16, that's 12 projects for 2016, and rather than blab on anymore, I will show you a small video about how it went.
In January, I learnt the Japanese art of paper folding. In February, I flew with kites, paper, remote controls. I learnt from a pro and I got airborne. In March, I drew myself, others, landscapes, buildings, myself again, and I got London doodling. In April, I poached, whisked, baked, made authentic dishes from all over the world, fasted and volunteered at a food bank. In May, I wrestled, lifted, climbed, danced, boxed, ran, got aerial, cycled and swam. In June, I found colour in a pretty grey London. I got my aura photographed, I tie-dyed and got people colouring in. Following the UK's Brexit vote, in July I learnt or did something in London for all the EU member states to see how their cultures affect our capital. In August, I animated with foam, Lego, pens and clay. In September, I made an interactive art installation for the London Design Festival where people wrote tributes to their everyday heroes and turned them into origami. In October, I photographed places, people, wildlife and collaborated with a photographer in California. In November, I wrote and released 2 songs. I'm here in December telling you my story.
What kind of started as this pretty naive creative project blossomed into this kind of self-motivational game where I was saying to myself, can I learn more? Can I achieve bigger things than I did the month previously? And it became a new way to structure my life where I was putting equal importance on my job and also producing an environment in which I could grow as a person and serve that urge for creative expression that I have. And over that year, I met some of the most talented and passionate people that I've ever met in my life who showed me how creativity can manifest itself in different people. So, this is all very well and good, and I could literally stand here all day telling you about all the weird and wonderful things I did that year. But I think it's perhaps what is more interesting is to consider what I learned that I could apply to other areas of my life. Well, first of all, each month taught me a lesson. For example, origami taught me about the art of patience and taking great care in small acts. Getting physical taught me that fitness isn't just about looking good and feeling good, it's about knowing yourself and getting outside and connecting with people and nature. Photography taught me about being present, and it taught me about being aware of your surroundings. And storytelling just taught me the raw, elemental power of learning how to tell your story. And more generally, I learned that curiosity is the magic dust of a creative process. Curiosity is what encourages us to dig a little deeper and not accept things at face value. It's a lens to see the world through, which turns what most people would see as insignificant and turns it into incredible. Curiosity takes minute and it turns it into mighty. During 12 by 16, I had to develop a new way of seeing the world each month that put whatever that month's theme was as the filter as I did for absolutely everything. An example of this would be, say, on my commute to work every morning, I would happily kind of just go about my business and walk from my house to Brixton Tube Station and not think much of it. And then 6 months in, when I was doing my month on the EU, suddenly I think, oh, there's a Portuguese delicatessen here that I walk past every single day, which I've never paid any attention to. So I think, oh, do you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm going to speak to them. So I go in and I speak to them and I start speaking to the owner of the delicatessen who's run this business for 30 years, and all he can talk about is the fact that in a few weeks he's going to be evicted because he can't afford the new rent hikes that are going on in the area. And suddenly that completely transforms my perspective of just this kind of Portuguese delicatessen. It has an identity, it has, much more to it. And those kind of moments were what served for inspiration for new ideas for me. I suppose really it's actually curiosity which motivated me to keep going through all of this, because it taught me that the process of getting to a final product is just as valuable as the product itself. The payoff is all in the final product of something, whether it's an event, an actual product, an experience, a piece of art, it doesn't matter. But all the good stuff, like the fear-facing, the questions, the mistakes, the meeting people and facing your fears, is all in the process of getting to that final product. I also learned that vulnerability is fertile ground for growth. As adults, as a room full of adults, we're not really conditioned to enjoy the thought of being beginners. Over our lifetimes, we kind of tick and cross that list of things that we're good and bad at. And we take some things with us, but we leave most of them behind for somebody else to be good at because that's their thing. And as children, we were all curious and we'd all give stuff a go because we were curious about the world and we didn't fear failing to be instantly good at something. And I think as adults, we hesitate for fear of feeling vulnerable and because we feel like we should be instantly capable. And that fear of feeling vulnerable is quite often what stops us in our tracks, despite how willing we may be for change. But I learned over this year that there's actually a lot of power and liberation in being a beginner as an adult. I put myself in some very, very vulnerable situations throughout that year, and trust me, it doesn't get more vulnerable than being in a headlock from a 17-stone Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter on a Tuesday night in Vauxhall. And as I said, I learned there's a lot of power and liberation in being a beginner as an adult. We live in such an instant grab culture these days that accepting that you're a beginner and you have a lot to learn in something is actually like a really valuable lesson in the art of patience. And also, because, going through something, facing up to your fears and getting through something that you're initially cautious of is really empowering. And I think the repetitiveness of me doing that over and over again has made me a much more courageous and kind of bold person across the board. A couple more for you, bits of wisdom. I learned that creativity is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Through this project, I had to challenge my creative capabilities in multiple ways each month. And I've found that exercising that part of my brain in different ways has made me a much more flexible and resilient creative thinker, where I feel a lot more confident about taking bold ideas and putting them into action. And I also feel like, in some ways, although the pattern is always slightly changing, that I've begun to recognise how patterns develop, how ideas develop in my brain, and how I can take the pattern for that and apply it to new situations. So, I'm going to start wrapping this up. But I just wanted to put something out here to the room for everyone to think about. So this room and this wider Creative Mornings community is full of problem solvers, artists, big thinkers and storytellers. And I've got absolutely no doubt that within this room there are multiple people who are looking for that next big idea or for the answer to a question that you're working on. Over the last couple of years, I've learned that just waiting for those electric moments of inspiration to hit, it's just not how it works. You know, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an artist, you're an employee, it's all the same. The inspiration for ideas, the questions and the answers are all out there somewhere in the real world, and it's our job to get in the way of them. There's an amazing quote by Pablo Picasso which describes this really well. He said that inspiration does exist, but it must find you working. Through leading with curiosity and pushing doors that seem closed to us and seeing where they lead, you're faced with new perspectives that can radically alter your way of thinking. This mindset... Hello? Oh, there you go. This mindset and these projects have just become part of the structure of my life now. At the start of this year, I started a new project called Q is for Quest, which follows the same logic as 12 by 16, but it's in 4 quarters apart as opposed to 12 months. And I'm continuing to challenge my perceptions and my creativity all the time. And since 12 by 16, I have done a co-headline installation for the London Design Festival, and I've given a name to all of these creative projects that I've undertaken. So I set up Channel 12 about 8 months ago, and it acts as my channel, as my place to experiment. It acts as my safe space to experiment. I'm not 100% what the end goal of these projects is just yet, but I'm kind of fine with that. Like, I'm totally fine because I believe in the process of getting somewhere. But having said that, there are now questions that I ask myself about how this process that I've found to be so rewarding could potentially be of value to other people. Whether that is people who are looking to unlock their creative potential, to people who are looking just to shake things up a bit in their life, or in fact to companies who are facing serious issues in the face of rapidly changing landscapes where innovation is more important than ever. I'm going to leave you with a quote by a man called Anthony Burgess, who is an author who wrote Clockwork Orange. I saw this written on a wall in Manchester last year, and it perfectly sums up for me what curiosity means. Every grain of experience is food for the greedy growing soul of the artist. Thank you very much.